Hi everyone, this is Denny with Why Is This True, and joining me today is Nicole Stanford from Louisiana. And Nicole and I met at Eric Raines's retreat back in August of this year, and that was in McLeod by Mount Shasta. So that's where we met, and we've done one little project together, which was a Healers Roundtable. And so, but we had scheduled this interview prior to that. So thanks for joining me, Nicole. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's so good to see you again. I was
Right.
so thrilled to meet you at that retreat. That was
Yeah,
wonderful.
it was fun. It was
It was a destiny thing.
yes, absolutely. Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are and what you're thinking about these days? What's on your mind?
All right. Well, I've been thinking a lot about like what to call myself, and I keep coming back to the term theorist because I feel like my biggest role is to access information and bring that in and normalize it and get it just injected into different institutions. So I have a PhD in English with a focus on social justice and things like that. So I love studying economic systems and political systems and education and pedagogy, the philosophy of teaching and the history of it and all that stuff. And understanding how they work hand in hand and, how it ties to shadow governments and stuff like that. So I recently put out a book called Good God, But You Smart. And it's about language prejudice and how that works in schools to sort kids into the right social class to make sure these get good grades, these get poor grades. So these will wind up making more money. These will, wind up being working class based on how they speak, their speech patterns, and how they write. And that's all based on what family you're born into, not how hard you work.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's definitely not democratic, equal opportunity, anything. It's very aristocratic.
Right.
So that's that book. And I love that field. I love the contacts I had. I couldn't believe I had amazing contacts, wonderful people who I worked with and who liked me and wanted to support my work. And they were like, what's your next book? I'll collaborate with you.
Were they all U.S. based?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was all about the U.S. economy.
Okay. All right.
But then I got to this point where I kept trying to write the next book, and I was like, I don't know, I just don't feel it. All my joy is in this other area, and it was about parenting for social change, how to parent the new generation. And I was really focusing on, or I am, so I'm writing that book now, and what am I calling it? Teaching your kids how to dissent, because I think that's what we're most lacking.
Oh.
I think parenting is all about, there's like two categories of parenting books. And it's like, one is how to just quash your children's will, how to break them, how to like authoritarianly just keep them from ever rebelling or anything, or having their own thoughts. And the other category is like how to use behaviorist techniques to manipulate them and to avoid scenarios where they might dissent. But it's never how to like teach them, okay, go ahead and disagree with me and let's negotiate something that works for both of us. So that's what I'm going for.
Wow.
I figured that's what we would need to bridge this world to the next. We need to be able to speak, to dissent productively, not unproductively. We all have tons of ways to unproductively dissent. We rebel, we vent, we sabotage, we resist. We know how to protest a lot. But we don't know how to move on to the next step where we negotiate a new set of arrangements.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think. If we wanted to raise a generation for social change, I think that's one of the most valuable skills. And
Right.
as the parent, I'm the authority in the house. I'm the model. I'm the stand-in for the government or whatever. So I try to teach them how to dissent well with me.
Right. Okay. So and so you've been applying this in your own family.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way I look at it is like,
So everyone's mad at you now.
everyone's mad at me. Oh, you mean do I dissent with my
No,
family?
no. I'm trying to envision this like new way of parenting and like how challenging it could be because you're kind of going against the grain everywhere.
I think there are a lot of beliefs around kids disagreeing with their parents. And so when it happens, we're like, oh my God, I got to find a book online, to find out how to make my kids quit doing this. But I think it's just a natural part of humanity to learn how to dissent. So it's the same way when your kids learn to walk, you're not like, oh my God, I'm going to find a book to find out how to keep them from ever walking because they might hurt themselves or break something. You just provide a safe environment for them to learn to walk. And if they fall, if they suck at it, you just encourage them to get up. You kiss their little boo-boos,
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do. If my kids are dissenting in a terrible way, I'll try to be like, I see what you're doing. It's really failing. You're trying to throw a tantrum about it. That's not going to work. Hey, why don't you try this? So, I mean, sometimes I could be too reactive to be able to do that. In the moment, I'm like, we're going to talk about this later.
Okay.
But for the most part, I'll try to, just be like, okay, I see you're throwing a tantrum about that. I can see that you want to say no, but you're saying it in a way that is making me get very emotional and makes me just want to shut down talking to you. You want to try something else? Let's have a do-over. You want to start over? Do you want to ask nicely if we can negotiate on this? So, in the beginning, I have to give them a lot more structure. But as they get older,
right.
I don't have to feed them lines.
And you're homeschooling, right?
Yeah, I'm also homeschooling.
So you're not competing with the government schools around all this?
Thankfully, I am not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a sticky wicket for a lot of parents.
Yeah, it is. But kids everywhere are used to that. There's a set of values at school. There's a set of values at home. At school, it's capitalism. At home, in most homes, it's socialism or communism. We share everything equally. We help each other. We work as a team. The grandma's providing free child care. And that's kind of one of the points I made in the book. I think that our version of the economy of capitalism only works because so many homes are so communal.
Interesting. Yeah, Mark Passio used that analogy for the idea of how non-patriarchal communities and economies could exist very well without the use of money. And he used the family as an example, and the need to actually break the family down, because that's one of the ways that you keep that idea in check. So an outgrowth of a normal functional family would be something like Ubuntu contributionalism, which is what Michael Tellinger talks about. And it's a great argument. It's easy to understand. My background is the Austrian School of Economics and the whole, sound money, and all that approach, which makes it works great if you discount the idea that human cultures, especially in non-patriarchal or matriarchal societies, the idea of money is laughable. And then if you go to the galactic perspective, allegedly, the only time you're going to see money is where the civilizations are in some form of slavery. Otherwise, money is just a ridiculous idea. It's silly. It's not needed. It's just, you're just adding a layer of BS onto something where it's not needed.
Yeah.
And it took me
to commodify labor.
Yeah, it took me 20 years to actually embrace that argument and see the logic of it. But and the other thing I want to ask you, have you ever read Charlotte Iserbyt or John Gatto or any of those people?
John Gatto. I haven't read him, but I'm familiar with his theories.
Oh, okay.
I've read Peter Gray. Peter Gray is the new voice of unschooling and going back to more community values, hunter-gatherer values.
Okay.
Education in children.
How about Anthony Sutton? Did you look at any of his stuff?
Start writing these names down.
Because he did a great job on tracking the history of American education and where it came from, its purpose, the dark underbelly of what the whole Chicago school and all this kind of stuff about developing the American education system, not only for younger kids but all the way up into the university level.
Oh, I covered all that in my book.
Yeah.
It's totally it was not to promote literacy, it was to control literacy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Charlotte Iserbyt was the one who came up through the ranks in the American education system, and she got appointed to a national post, I think Director of Education for the Department of Education or something under Reagan. And she smelled a rat and wrote a book about it. And so it's called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. And so she was the one who wrote that. It became a pretty famous book. I think it's available online for free now. But she really pulled the plug on that whole, Department of Education and what they were really about. So.
I wonder why I never came across that. In all my studies, I do these extensive book reviews.
Compared to probably a lot of the stuff that you looked at, it was probably pretty pedestrian. It was real. I think a lot of it was developed for non-academic. Yeah. So that's maybe why it didn't come up. I don't know. I'm just speculating. Yeah, I haven't read the whole book. I read parts of it back in the 90s when it early. I think that's when it came out in the 90s. Anyway, that's fascinating because there's a lot of homeschooled parents, and there's a lot of, I would suspect there's a lot of homeschooling that's still developed with the idea of fitting in and overcoming the what they would be perceived as deficits when compared to government schools. So you have your homeschooled kids, you want them to be able to fit into some, like going to college, right?
Yeah.
So that somehow that is still held in high regard, even for the homeschooling faction, and that creates huge problems, I would imagine.
Oh, not really.
No?
Not for us so far. I've established my own co-op with some friends who have similar ideas about unschooling, so it's been fine. But we do try to avoid the really religious.
But I mean, like if you're homeschooling with the idea that you want to end up with a child that's very amicable to the idea of going to college or postgraduate studies.
Oh, me personally? No, I'm not. We do.
No,
you mean people?
If you're homeschooling your kids, and the idea in the back of your mind is to end up with a child who's very well prepared to go into an institution like higher education in the United States, for me that would seem to be problematic.
Right.
Because they're kind of at cross purposes.
Well, that's why I think the parents have to release outcomes, or decide what's your goal. If you are educating your child and you're hoping to normalize them to the current economy, then okay, that's your goal. Then you're going to educate this way. You're going to use a classical curriculum, which to me is the greatest hits of all empires. I've looked at that curriculum and it's just like Rome and all the Persian Empire. It's about kids that's their cultural awareness. Anyway, I come from that kind of background, so I'm very critical of it. The purpose of all education is to normalize the youth, to seamlessly integrate them into some sort of economy, some imagined future. So that's across the board, unschooling, whatever. Everyone has a vision. So you just got to be really clear about your vision. The thing that I've come up with in my family is, and a lot of my friends agree with me who are in the co-op, we give our children options. They have free will, but we want to equip them for what our vision of the future is. However, if they don't want to do that, if they want to be normal capitalists or whatever, I know I'm using a lot of economic terms, but it's because I'm thinking of the future economy, then, they can choose to do that. So we're doing a co-op system. The way a business co-op runs is, well, I'll tell you, the fundamental thing we're going for is in the capitalist system, in order to win, you have to beat somebody else. Someone somewhere has to lose or suffer for me to win. And the rules could they could easily be rearranged to say, for me to win, everyone has to win. For me to vote for me to have a pay raise, I have to vote for everybody to have a pay raise, So the rules we could just be playing that game in our economy instead of the other one. So in our co-op, that's what we're going for. The kids will have to vote. It's a curiosity-based co-op. So right now the kids are a little too young, so we haven't been able to do this. But we're headed in that direction. Can you hear that?
Yeah. It proves you know what you're talking about, that you really do have kids in the house.
That's the one who is helping me write the book right now. Who's on every possible thing. He's like, yeah, let's test that theory.
Oh, cool.
My sister lives with us. My sister's in college, and she watches the kids. It's amazing.
So you don't have to go to the lab.
What's that?
You don't have to go to the lab. It's in your house.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, so we do the co-op system, and I kind of imagine it like we're creating these little sleeper agents. So we have all these kids who can fit just fine into capitalism, but as soon as we get the 100th monkey, no, that's not the right one. Maybe like 51%, and we're switching over to a new system. All these kids that we've trained in this way are ready to stand up and take over. And they're like, I know exactly how to do this. I know how to play a game where the rules are that, everyone has to win. I know how to do that.
Yeah. I don't think it's 51%.
What do you think it is?
I think it's somewhere around between 10 and 15. For something to go, so the words I use is the tipping point, going viral, or the 100th monkey.
Yeah, yeah.
And then if you look at some examples of
100th monkey, I was reaching for that at first.
Yeah, so I always look for historical examples, and this is really hard to do. I mean, but the one that always kind of like piqued my interest was in the Revolutionary War. Allegedly, only 13% of the colonial population was in favor of going to war with Britain. But they did it anyway.
Oh, wow.
And then they ended up winning, ostensibly winning. No one wins in a war, by the way. It doesn't matter what war. But anyway, for me, that was an interesting example to cite in history where you really didn't need like an overwhelming a majority to do something drastic like that, So anyway, it's kind of a very hopeful kind of figure to keep in the back of your head, the magic 13% or whatever.
Yeah.
So the other thing I want to ask you about is you do healing work, and you can there's a lot of things that I know you can do when it comes to intuitive skills and that kind of stuff, and all the while you have a PhD life, so to speak, a life in academia. And I was wondering if you would speak to that, because I think that's an issue for a lot of people, because you're trying to wear two pairs of shoes simultaneously, and it can be pretty tricky.
Yeah. Well, back when I was writing my first book, I had spirit guides who showed up specifically when I wrote. So that was kind of how I integrated it back then. And I didn't know it, but I couldn't have expressed it back then, but I've always kind of had this direct connection where I'm like, well, what's the answer to this question? Oh, that's it. Okay, got it. So I've always had this access to information or a perspective that just completely made sense. And it was frustrating in grad school because you have to cite a source. I couldn't just say, it's my idea.
Source creator.
Yeah, I couldn't say, well, I went to this other dimension and I looked down and that was what I saw. But that's what it looks like. I go up to some other dimension and I look, and it's I can't see people or names or anything. I see energies and I see how things flow. And
you've done that since you were a child? Since you were young?
Yeah.
Very young?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gotten stronger and stronger. When I was in college, it was like it got to where I was hearing words, like I'd be talking to somebody and it felt like a TV turned on somewhere in the room, and I was like, hang on, somebody's talking. I have a message for you. And it was their higher self, and I didn't know. I was my way of seeing things was Christian, so I thought it was God or an angel or something. Anyway, so when I was writing my first book, I just directly downloaded a lot of the information, and I was able to synthesize a lot of large concepts and show how other perspectives had been missing this or that. So I love that book, Good God But You Smart, that one. And it's called that because it's based on it's about Cajuns, and that's like a Cajun. My good God But You Smart. Because I'm Cajun, so I use that as my case study. So
I went to Cajun school,
What do you mean you went to Cajun school?
I went there to buy a ship in 1988, and we ended up spending 5 weeks in Larose.
Yes.
It was about 60 miles south of New Orleans.
And
I met 30-year-old men who'd never been there, had no intention of going.
Yeah,
it was a great experience. It was actually like being in a different country for me.
Yeah.
For me.
I totally agree. I feel like I grew up in another country. I love it here. There are so many pre-capitalist traditions here. It's great. It's great local culture and everything. So anyway, a lot of it was just direct downloads, and that was awesome. I still love that book. I think it can change the field that I was writing in. And then I also had some guides who showed up, but that was when I was in a very fourth dimensional way of living where I did need guides. So I don't really have guides anymore. But back then I had some pretty impressive guides. Martin Luther King Jr. showed up one time. And he just said that he shows up when people are bringing in his literature. So I was like, okay. Then he was like, you need a metaphor here. This is too complex, this thing that you're writing here. So that was what I did back then. And I've gotten a lot more selective about who I listen to in the guide world. And I've cut a lot of ties. And to me, it's not that they seem evil. It just seems that my vibration has gone higher than theirs. And if I stay with them, they pull me down.
Okay.
You know?
Right.
So, anyway, now, you're right. It's been a separate thing. I didn't take clients. I mostly just worked with friends. You know, it was kind of a word of mouth thing. People would come to me if you needed a demonic clearing or something, or, you know, you just needed to know, like, if someone had an illness, you know, she would contact me and say, what's going on? What's going on with my baby? What do I need to do? And I would just sort of figure it out. But I only opened the practice since 2014, I think, or 2012. Mm-hmm. And my husband gave me a deck of tarot cards, and I was like, what am I going to do? I don't use instruments. I discovered it was like a 5-paragraph essay, which I teach to my students all the time, you know, and it gives you a structure and it gives you a flow. And so, you know, sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask. But a tarot spread will just help you, you know, find out all the details involved. Or sometimes people come to me and they say, well, I just want to know what my higher self wants to tell me. So I'm like, okay, let's go for it. And it gives us a good structure. And it also helps with blocks. But
so you're saying you do use the tarot?
Yeah,
okay.
I do. I still use. A lot of times with clients, I'll just switch to only doing energy work. But sometimes people have a lot of inner work that we need to do. You know, if there's just a lot of trauma and attachment points, I'm going to only do the tarot spread and find out what was the old trauma, how can we release it.
And do you use a particular spread, or you just?
Just whatever we need for the situation.
Oh, so you have different spreads depending on the situation.
Yeah, I like I don't even know what it's called, but it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's 8 cards. It's just the situation, the backstory, and stuff. I think it's a pretty conventional spread.
Yeah.
But I changed the shape of it because I needed that. I changed it to a pyramid for myself.
Okay.
Instead of a straight line.
Yeah.
And then I made some other spreads that are like, if people want to know about their child, I'll pull a card, you know, here's the best discipline style. Here's what you need to know about your kid's spirituality. Like for some kids, it's to study other religions. For some kids, it's to go into martial arts. You know, things like that. Here's what you need to know about your kids' medical decisions. For some kids, they're quick manifestors. So as soon as they get any kind of infection, they need a medical intervention. Like some of them, they need help right away. And some of them, just non-interference.
Yeah, right, right.
And a lot of parents probably intuitively know this, but it helps to have someone confirming it.
Right. So going back to the question, so there's kind of a dichotomy here between, you know, the spiritual, intuitive, helper life in the woo-woo world, and then there's the academic, Nicole.
Yeah. So up until now, they've just kind of been separate, and I've even kept, you know, separate names for them.
Your name? When you say separate names, you mean your name?
Well, I won't put my name on the intuitive work.
Right.
I'll just say that's under the Integration Project. Which is the name of my practice. But it's been so hard for me because I was trying to figure out, do I even want to continue to do energy work? Because I'm not that interested in taking on a lot of clients. The ones who come to me bring fascinating concepts to me. So a lot of the people who came to me had trauma specifically from the way their parents raised them. Perfect. I'm writing a book about parenting. So I feel like sometimes it ties in that way, but I don't feel like I'm going to just become a professional full-time healer and reader. It's cool, but I move through things so quickly, and it frustrates my husband. Because I'm like, oh, a new body of information, must learn it immediately. I absorb it, I become an expert in it, and then I'm like, well, that was fun. What's next?
Yeah, so, I'm the same way.
Oh, are you?
Oh, yeah. I've gone through all these iterations of like farming, fine art painting, just this whole list of stuff that, and it started, as soon as I got out of the house, and it's been going that way. It drives my wife nuts, but she's kind of acclimated to it.
Oh,
but yeah, it's hard on the spouses.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so I know exactly what you're talking about. So nothing surprises her anymore. She's just like, okay, that's Denny.
Yeah.
And then, I'll pick up something and get really good at it, and then I stop doing it, and everybody's going like, why did you stop? You're, like the painting. I was very good at painting, like seascapes. I used to paint seascapes. But it was just like, been there, done that. What's next? Life's short. You just like, if I lived 500 years, I'd do it for 100. But you know what I mean? So you just like.
I feel you. And I know what you mean about how people would be like, well, you're so good at it. You can't. We need to say, yes. We need more of whatever you do.
Keep doing that.
And that's hard for me because I feel like in some way I've been programmed to pay attention to that. Like if people tell you you're good at something, you should probably keep doing it. So there have been.
I'm just the opposite.
Well, good for you. It's been a struggle.
Well, it comes with a price. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, the reason I asked this question is because I have a feeling there's a lot of people out there like this where they say, well, if I really pursue this intuitive side, my intuitive skills, it's going to put my professional life at risk, or it's going to put my relationships at risk. And so, but it's been so suppressed. And I think it's really important for kids because there seems to be quite a lot of evidence that many of the children being born now and the ones that are maybe, 10 to 15 years old are quite different than previous generations in terms of their intuitive skills and their ability to hold on to those things and not get brainwashed out of them. And those things are going to be coming to the fore, and they're going to be faced with a lot of the similar kind of problems. Like, what am I giving up in that intuitive area of my life to participate in the system that's being presented to me in terms of cooperating with the economy, the educational systems, all this other stuff, medical stuff. And so it's a great dichotomy that's being presented now that that some people figure a way to deal with, And, and I was curious about how that was for you because it seems to be coming up for you right now.
Yeah.
That whole idea.
I know. I loved it. I talked to you the other day and you were like, well, Nicole, think about why you don't want your name, because I don't know if I want my name on the title of this video, you know. Because right now, my academic book, Good God, But You're Smart, just got reviewed, and people are Googling me a lot right now. I know because I get notifications through this thing I don't even want, but I get these notifications. So then, I know you're supposed to keep your name linked to one thing in particular, so I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I mind people finding the video or if it's, how much of it is just like following protocol. There's like a part of me that's like, don't cast your pearls before swine, like in that way I don't share a lot of stuff with people who I know won't be receptive. Right. But I know there's also like the, fear of being discredited, and having the things merged. Yeah.
Right. Oh, she's woo-woo. Safe to ignore. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, okay, so I run into the same issue in the SSP or MAP, what they call Mercenary Army Program. And there's a lot of people that are getting their memories back and they want to go public because they realize that they're just being called to do that and they really don't understand it. Or they've thought about it and they think, I need to tell my story because it's going to help other people. And then so they're faced with the same kind of thing. If I come out with this and go public, my family's going to find out, that my friends at work are going to find out. And then, so it's a big deal for some people. And there's a lot of people out there who've had these experiences and they're not going to come through. But for me, the way I think about it, it's like the way forward is for us to stop bullshitting each other and start being honest about who we are and what we care about. you know?
Yeah.
And that's what's going to produce the change. That's what's going to get us to that 13%. And that's what's going to start turning the tide. So, you know, we're trying to comply with protocol and all these other things, you know, but what's the price of doing that? Really? What is it? What kind of it? Who dung? Was that you dinging?
It's me. I'm sorry.
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry. I didn't know how to turn it off. Just ignore it.
It's okay. I have the same thing. I have little beeps and blops going on over here.
Okay.
But anyway,
well,
so
professional over there.
So I'm kind of like a bulldog around this subject. So I apologize if I'm kind of pushing you to talk about this, you know, more than maybe you want to.
I like it. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like I was saying about you earlier. You know, if you don't challenge me on something, then how can we be friends? You know. You disagree. No, I've thought a lot about it, and I thought, you know, I've been aware of all this stuff that's going on. I mean, God, maybe my whole life, but I always saw it in different archetypal ways. So when I was young, I was afraid of the dark, but it was the dark. It was monsters, and then I came to understand it as demons and angels when, you know, through my Christian faith, because I was very, very Christian when I was younger.
What denomination?
Started out Catholic, and my parents both switched to Protestant.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so I got it all. I've been baptized 4 times. I should go back and check some of those connections.
Right, get some of that water back.
You know, I found a contract on somebody. She was linked to a negative deity that had like posed as Jesus in her church, and when she got baptized, it's like she committed her life to that guy, that deity, and we had to say it was a false Jesus. So we had to sever it, and it kept looping her. She would heal her heart trauma, and it would loop her back into like a time in a place in time where her heart trauma came back, her heart chakra. So she could never heal it. It always came back. So I had to sever the connection. And when I went in to find it, I found the deity, and I was like, and then I found the contract, and I said, I want to revoke this or break it. And then I found on it that there was some statute of limitations that had been exceeded. So I was like, what is that? Turns out she was a walk-in, and that was a contract made with the original soul, not with this one.
Wow.
But that deity kept lording it over this current soul, even though it knew it didn't have the right. So as soon as I saw that, it just backed off. I didn't even have to, you know, yeah. Well,
wow.
God, I just went off on something. Help me focus.
It's okay. So yeah, we were just talking about this.
Oh yeah, angels and demons. So then I saw it in terms of angels and demons. And then I became atheist, but I knew that I still heard other people's thoughts, and it was something I just had to be aware of when I was traveling, because I would hear a suicidal thought, and I'd have to go, no, that's not mine, you know, it's somebody else's. So then I thought of it in terms of vibrations. I thought, you know, quantum physics. Maybe I just am a very sensitive instrument, and I pick up on the vibrations of certain thoughts, and that's all that's going on. And, you know, then I went through a period of understanding things as inner figures, and, you know, whatever I think I see in that person is actually a projection of, you know, inner work that I personally need to do. You know, everything is really just my inner cosmos. And then I began to understand things in terms of like New Age and, you know, entities and stuff like that. And then the next thing was ETs, which blew my mind.
When did that happen? The ET thing? Do you remember what year?
I read Dolores Cannon. Yeah, it was 2017. I read
recently.
All the Dolores Cannon. No, 2015. I'm sorry.
Okay, so 2015, the ET thing came in.
Yeah, I was reading through all the Dolores Cannons, and I was like, that, you know, it makes sense that could happen, but I was like, but not me. And then I was like, wait a minute, what if I'm an ET? And so I had seen my higher self before, like glimpses, but never like the full picture. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do it. And I went in my dark living room. It was the middle of the night. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to see it. And then I saw my higher self, and she was really tall. And I was like, okay, beautiful hair, nice, presented as female, had these big eyes, and I could see it looked really Egyptian, like what you would see in the Egyptian eyes.
Right.
And then I was like, so far normal, okay, keep going. And then I got to her hands. Her hands were just long, and I think it had like 4 fingers. And I was like, I'm an ET.
Did you see that video that I posted about the it was supposedly a recent video from the Kremlin, the security area in the Kremlin, and these two purple female beings walk into the security area, and so the video is slow motion, and apparently there's a security guy who asked them to pick up their dresses so he could see why they were over 9 meters tall.
Oh.
And it could have been a fake video, but it was expertly done, because a lot of times in the fake videos they just take the human figure and they manipulate it so it looks like abnormally long. But if you look at some of the anatomical features on these beings as they walk in, the hands and the elbows in particular look very non-human. It looks like it's humanoid but non-human. And so when you were describing this, I thought, wow, that's just like the video I saw.
It might be very skinny. She was really skinny.
Yeah.
And and it looked like Egyptian hieroglyphs, how everybody has like a greyhound type body.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's what very long hands. And I asked, I was like, am I an ET? And it was a big deal. Like, this is one of those things I didn't just download quickly, because I was like, I'm so scared to know. Yeah. But what I heard is that it's like 8th or 9th dimension or something like that. And it's angelic, but not an angel.
Right.
From angelic realm.
Right.
And I feel like I was heavily involved with stuff in Egypt, you know. But Egypt doesn't resonate for me, but like North Africa does.
Okay.
So I don't, anyway, so yeah, that was when the AT thing came in. So that's how I understand things in terms of, but sometimes I go, am I going to move on to another system of archetypes for understanding this? You know, or because I feel like when I believed in God, I mean, I believe in God, but you know, when I believed in the Bible stories literally, when I got to a point where I kind of outgrew them, I realized those were fables. That helped me. That's the structure I needed. And so I don't know. I sometimes I'm hesitant to attach to something I'm doing because I know I move past everything.
Yeah. So the way that's helped me is that I don't attach to it. I just use it as a learning tool.
Yeah.
You know, and I went through a whole episode where I was studying Christian apologetics, which is the defense of Christianity. And I, like you, started out Catholic, and then I went to more of the Protestant, you know, post-Reformation type stuff, and you know, studied Charles Taze Russell and the whole, you know, Norman Geiger, and you know, scaling the secular city, and all, you know, the whole, you know, all the Strong's Concordance and the whole thing, you know, studied the Bible, had like 5 different Bibles, and you know, and I did that like for 8 years, you know. But my initial introduction was the monetary system. That was where the rabbit hole started with me, and that's where I kind of like, that was the beginning of my wake up in 1996 thereabouts.
Wow.
But long strange trip it's been. But I found a lot of the things I'm learning now. Now I'm starting to appreciate my time that I spent in the whole Christian thing. Because the Christian thing really prepared me for what I'm learning now, especially around the ET thing, which also I discovered in the same year you did, 2015. The ET aspect really wasn't part of my worldview, and that came in around 2015, about right around 2015, and that was around the Telos books. Ariella Louise Jones wrote a series of books about Telos, and that's where I started to really seriously consider the whole ET aspect. And so now, you know, and now I'm kind of like looking at this information we're getting from this channeling series with Carl Mollison around the whole ET issue, and then more recently Marshall V. N. Summers, who's got quite a story to tell that started for him back in the 80s, and so he's got like 6 books out now about the whole alien intervention program that's going on now. That's kind of where I'm at now. So we'll see what happens. Based on what's happened before, I my expectations. I'm trying to really remove expectations. You know, I mean, because the changes have been pretty dramatic. You know.
Yeah.
And
I don't know about you, but I never discard anything. I never go, oh, I reject that now. I just go, I'm so grateful I had that, and I'm integrating it as I learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of it turns out to be useful.
Yeah,
You know?
and true, but just presented in some other paradigm.
Right.
Yeah.
And definitely part of the path that got you to where you are now.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah, and I wanted to say more about Christianity too, because that was actually my first entity and implant removal. It was in a Christian setting.
oh,
Can you believe it? Yeah, it was. There's this book called Steps to Freedom. I can't remember who wrote it, but this guy has covered like every possible, like how you have to revoke consent and all that stuff.
mm-hmm.
It was this older woman, Christian woman, who walked me and like a lot of people in my college group through this. And we sat down in a session, and we went through and revoked all ties, like light as a feather, Ouija board, anything like that.
Yeah.
Everything going back to childhood. Went through the forgiveness process with every single person in our life, cut ties, you know.
Right.
Just cleaned out everything. And I remember at the end of my session, I was like, it's so quiet in my head. And I didn't know that was a chatterbox, that what Eric does, Eric Rains.
Right, right.
And everybody who went through it. And so I went through it, and then I also was the interceder or intercessor for other people. So there was the main lady doing it, and then there was the person having the removal, which they didn't call it a removal. Right. And then there would be a prayer warrior, you know, right, nearby. And I did that for a few other sessions. So I had a few experiences with it. And that was at the end of it, we'd all go, oh, it's so quiet in my head. It's amazing. Yeah. And so having learned that technique, I would just keep up myself over the years. I would go back and check for any ties, or, you know, do I owe forgiveness or apologies anywhere, and just clean all that stuff out, or find energies, you know, on me. Yeah. So I was like 18 and I'm 40 now. So that was like 22 years ago. Right.
So what would your advice be to someone who has an intuitive life and a professional life, and they're having issues around integrating or separating, or?
Well, what I've decided to do is follow my joy. I thought it was a dichotomy, like I had to be either an energy worker or an academic, and I finally decided. And this is recently when I saw a client that boggled me, because I was like, it looks like this might be a clone, but my belief system is that she can't be, you know. And I just decided I'm just going to believe what my intuition tells me, and not try to fit it into a belief system. And so I feel like that's happening for me in so many ways right now. So I just decided I'm not going to try to figure out, put a name on it or anything. I'm not going to say whether I'm going to be an energy worker or not, or I'm just going to follow my joy. And I feel I feel so joyful about knowing you, having met you, and you know, something that I've mentioned to you before was a huge activation for me, meeting you, because I knew that what I was doing was nothing compared to what I could be doing. And like the way I heard it in my mind was, this is party tricks compared to what I could be doing. And I don't know what it is, but I want to find out. And I was having that conversation with you. Right. And I was like, well, I'm writing about this, you know, what I would want to call childism or something, how we feel like we can abuse children and discount their feelings and their thoughts and decisions because they're children. They're subhuman. And it's like the same resonance as the pedophilia and the child sacrifice, like the whole thing, you know, and it's just like the top end of it. And it enables a lot of the other stuff.
Yeah, I've had this feeling like for the last 6 months or so, like there's like the kids are teachers. We're gonna start paying attention to them, because there's an aspect of children where they are literally teachers. Yeah. And that's the kind of respect that they should be given, especially right now. Anyway, I just got to say that. I just had that. Yeah. 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 I mean, I'll look into that. That's really interesting. But anyway, so what I decided to do is just follow my joy and not try to come up with a trajectory or an end game. You know, yeah. I don't know how it's going to turn out. So I just was like, well, I'm not going to try to work it so that my name is clear, or, you know, or whatever. Right. Because I'm not thinking I'm not trying to create an academic career. I was just kind of like following the basic guidelines of how to like keep your CV streamlined. Yeah. So yeah, basically I'm just doing what brings me joy. And I know those mornings that I go out and I start working on my book again, I'm so excited. I love it. So do you get writer's block? Does that happen?
I mean, yeah, I guess. But if I get a block, I get around it really quickly. The same way I do with intuitive readings. Just go from another angle.
Okay. All right.
You know what you do if you get writer's block? You say, what's blocking me? You know, you open another document and then you start going, why can't I write about this? And you'll find some emotional block.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I had an episode when I was painting, and I wanted to start another seascape, but I really didn't have a subject yet. And someone said, well, you do seascapes all the time. You should do a landscape. And so I said, oh, God, okay. So I do landscape. So there's this barn at our house with this liquid amber, and it was beautiful. Like the evening sun would light up the tree and the barn, and there was the reds and the greens, and it was a really beautiful scene. So I started to paint it, but it just wasn't, I couldn't. And then all of a sudden it just hit me. It says, the seascape, and I just put that painting away. It was still wet. I just took it off the easel, and I grabbed this this canvas, and I did the quickest painting I've ever done of a seascape, and it was my best painting ever. And it was weird. Like I needed to go to something that I didn't like to do and spend some time with it, and it was catalyzing me to go back to what I really loved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was like, I don't know. I don't know why I even thought of that, but
no, that's a great trick. That's if you have writer's block too. It's also like go do a load of laundry, and then you're gonna know exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Go pull weeds for 2 hours or something.
Yeah. Don't go do something to try to shake it up. Don't be like, I'm gonna get in the shower and think about it. Go for a jog and think about it. You have to go do something totally mundane, and then your subconscious works it out for you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Boy, humans are strange critters.
Yeah. But back to that the trying to choose one or the other. I realized I felt like a lot of times the clients were coming to me to do readings, and I was like, wait. For a long time, I was like, I don't have a practice. I don't have a PayPal. So no, and I would just turn people away and say, people wanted to recommend me to someone else. Please, you have to do my brother. And I was like, just no. But I realized so many valuable skills and knowledge I have now are from things I just did on the side that weren't professional. So it took me a long time, and I was like, I have to open a practice. I have to have a name. I have to have a logo. And when I quit trying to do that, it just kind of flowed, and I just got whoever I needed, whoever matched me. So I figure I'm just going to keep doing that. I don't know if I'm going to push to have a practice. I'm not really that interested in clients right now. I love systems, and I don't know if people out there watching this video are even aware of this, but I found programming on everything. I found a program on my husband's car there are these like energetic spiritual programs on everything. So his car was like programmed to shut down and fail at a certain point so that he'd have to buy a new car. And I was like, oh, I'll remove that. And I found a program on the wheels that was, it guaranteed our safety, but it tied us into some kind of group, some kind of entities that we wouldn't want safety from. We wouldn't want to be involved with. So I severed us from that and, gave us safety connected to something else. And then I found a program on my daughter's Disney movie, and it was programmed to, it's Frozen. Let it go, let it go.
Oh.
And it has all this blue crystal stuff in it. And it's because so many kids right now who are incarnated are like my daughter. You met my daughter, Emma.
Yeah.
Whenever I move her energy around, it looks like blue crystals. It doesn't move like gold or something. It's like these bright blue crystals. And it literally goes, it like ice forming.
Right.
And I realized there's so many souls like her, and that's why they're obsessed with that movie, because they're like, oh, it resonates with me. But the program on the movie caused them to go, I admire that Elsa has that. I wish I had it. But it's something I don't have. It's something someone else has. It was designed to like cut them off from knowing that it was in them.
Yeah. Do you think the programming is heavier on women in general than it is on men? Is there more efforts to program and to dissuade women from their true selves than in the male?
I don't see more. I see them going after different chakra sets, different energetic patterns.
Okay, so there's an equal amount of energy devoted to manipulating both sexes.
Yeah, that's how I see it. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
But I found narcissistic patterns on a few of the men I've done. They literally had, and this was from vaccine nanotechnology. They would have these little, look like bugs flying around in their aura, zzz, like that, and it kept them from hearing well. So they would try to connect to somebody, and they'd be like, God, I don't know, I see your mouth moving, but I can't hear what you're saying. And so they'd be like, they'd give up on people. So I do this thing where when I spot that, I just kind of clap and magnetize them all, and they fall. It kind of stuns them. And I sweep them up, get rid of them, and then I find whatever was inside them that resonated with it. And it's almost always vaccine nanotechnology. It tends to pool in the hands and feet. So I just magnetize it and pull it all into the hands and feet. And a lot of times they can feel it as I'm pulling it out. And so then I pull out the consciousness, the living part of it. So then after that, the physical part of it is going to dump into their system to detox. But I pull out the consciousness of it,
Wow.
so that they can hear. Then that's part of the pattern. And the rest of the narcissist pattern is a big block right here over the solar plexus, so they can't see their own worth. So they have to steal from other people. They always have to be complimented or the center of attention.
Wow.
Because they don't get it from their own chi.
So that's very interesting. You talk about the nanotechnology and the vaccines, because when we did a channeling about that with Creator with Carl, that was really the only thing he talked about. Didn't talk about didn't talk about the toxicity, like the mercury or the all the different the metals and and stuff that's in there that are actually toxins. Creator just talked about the nanotechnology as being, I guess, the most serious part of the whole vaccination thing.
Yeah.
And also Pardon?
I wanted to tell you, this is what I found in my brother who struggles with addiction. He had nano in him that created a pattern in him that corresponded to heroin. Crave it. And it's like the nano someone could set up an electromagnetic frequency around him, and it would just arrange this way or arrange that way. And it could just create whatever response in him or craving that it needed at the time. I couldn't do a lot of work on him because he wasn't ready to release his demons, but he stayed with us for a while, and all his entities had to stay outside the house because I have these protections set up. So it's the middle of summer, it's Louisiana, it's hot, and he likes to always wear long sleeves because he has tracks on his arms.
Yeah.
But he's just constantly outside just sweating. Because his entities couldn't come in with him, so they would call him outside. I was like, why does he sit on the porch so much?
Wow.
Anyway, but he finally moved on. And that was a fascinating thing. And I mentioned to you before, the heroin thing is when I look into him, my brother, and all the connections he has, they all have these warrior type souls. So I can see that they incarnated for this certain thing. And the heroin is that's really being used to neutralize them. And they just look like, guys in the trenches just being taken out one by one. It was so heartbreaking.
Yeah. Like in this age group around late 20s to mid 30s, seeing a lot of that out. Addiction is, that was my introduction to Carl, actually.
I remember you talking about the alcohol.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I started going to AA when I was in my 20s, and I never heard entity attachments. Never heard it once. And I just think, God, if they just introduced that subject into that, that view of addiction, how many people could be helped? And then, unfortunately, my sister went that route. She was, she had addiction issues, and she ended up doing the AA thing, but then stayed on the pharma version.
Oh, yeah.
So she had the opioid thing going on concurrently with the AA thing. And you know who won? And so she passed. She passed away in I think 2011. She's a younger sister. So yeah, so it's a really touchy subject for me, as it is for you, because you have a sibling, you know,
Yeah.
and
Who I want to say initiated reconciliation with me 2 days ago. Amazing. So I'm really
your
pumped.
brother.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. He was at a family event, and I was like, oh, there he is. Wonder what's going to happen. You know, because we hadn't seen him since the night we found out he was planning to rob us blind, and we kicked him out. He had been robbing us all along and blaming other people. Anyway, so yeah, a couple nights ago, he started paying back the money, and for me, that was how I knew, because the last time I did a reading on him, right before he left, when I looked for his soul, I found Mammon, like this deity that was like, you know, is in charge of the money system, like the bad money system.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was
Is there
like,
a good money system?
there actually is.
There is?
I mean, some of it's actually money, but yeah. Wild thing happened. Actually, we were taking out a mortgage. We just bought a house. So we were just, you know, starting all those agreements. And I was like, let me just check who we're agreeing with. And I found that same guy, Mammon. So I was like, okay, I understand that this is your money system. And I said, what do we owe you for using? I said, with gratitude, you know, I'm asking, you know, thank you that I can use the system to finance my house. What do we owe you? And he said a toll. I said, great, that must be the interest. And I just went through and cleaned out anything extra, because I found like there were some other things that he was taking from us that we didn't actually owe. And then like a couple days later, we found out that we were going through Capital One, the bank, and they denied our loan. We were like, what? So we had to get a loan through a smaller bank. It was fine. We love the energy of it. And then a couple weeks later, as we were closing, we found out that Capital One was shutting down its whole mortgage division. So I don't know what would have happened to us if we had stayed with that. No, I just felt really thankful that I had gone through. So what I did was attach our money energy. I said, okay, we'll pay your toll, but I want to source my energy through abundance, through the earth, because that's a source of
Right.
a provision.
Right,
you know,
right.
so you're going to be paying with this, not with the Mammon system.
Because most money, the magic money systems that I'm familiar with are all based on the idea of scarcity.
Oh, yeah.
That's part of the programming behind all that. It's like, you know, we live in a scarce universe. That's why we need money. And that's not true. That's that's a big freaking lie.
Forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. That's what I think is the fundamental thing. I don't think it's capitalism that's wrong or any money system. Right. It's just if you have that scarcity mentality.
Right. So we got waylaid there. You were talking about.
I know. How many conversations have I opened without finishing?
It's all right. So we're talking about the restitution and.
Oh, my brother.
Yeah.
Oh, so that was. He was such a good liar, and if he stole something from me, like I said, when I look, I only see energy. I don't see people or boundaries. Right. So I didn't know who stole it, but I knew how to get my wallet back. You know, and I did get my wallet back. Long story. But I decided I don't know how to believe him when he says things, because I don't know who's speaking. Although I can kind of see what spirit is in him at the time. You know, at different times. He had a lot going on.
Yeah.
But he hid a lot. There was always a block, and I would say, "Can I look at that?" And he would say no, and I'd say, "Okay, I'll honor that." Anyway, so what I decided was, when the money flow reverses and he's not mooching or taking or needing, when he's actually, even if he can't pay me back in cash, if he's trying to give back favors or something, you know, volunteering to help out with work, then I'll know that he's safe to be around.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. I wanted to mention. What's that?
And he began to pay us back.
So that's wonderful. It must be a great feeling. That's the other thing that I wanted to talk about, because when you have a family and you're a mother and you have kids and you're doing this work, this is someone I'm thinking about someone in particular, but you know, she's really stepped up her game. You know, she's becoming involved, and her kids are like suffering from this, you know, from this
tax and stuff.
Coming out of the closet, as it were. And they were suffering before, but now, you know, there's kind of an intensity that's risen up around this thing. You're like, well, you know, I'm going to be very active about being a force for good. That draws attention to you, and if they can't get to you, then they go after your family. And so for women with kids, that's another reason, you know, not to step out, because it's a method for protecting not only yourself but your kids. And really, that's a very serious issue, you know. So, and if you don't have
so you want to talk about how to protect the kids?
Yeah.
I mentioned to you before, I feel like the woman in Kill Bill who, you know, she was chopping vegetables in one scene, and the next moment she was going to get all her rifles and or not, whatever. No, I think maybe she used knives. You know, so I feel like I host homeschool co-op in the morning, and in the afternoons I'm like, you know, going after ETs. So in that way, I've tested myself a lot, so I know what I can handle. But I have a few thoughts on that. First, I've set up massive protections on the house. And actually, my brother, who struggles with addiction, did LSD at my house one time, and he was like, the light in your house is wild. I couldn't believe it. It was like this electric blue here, and your bedroom was gold, and everything he described, I was like, yep. That's how I set it up. So that was wild. So I have protection set up in the home. And then we have a ritual every night. We send away all our bad stuff, because I think everybody produces a certain amount of physical waste every day, and we flush it. And you also produce emotional and spiritual, energetic waste. And so we need to get that away so we don't attract maggots or negative, you know, destructive energies, because that needs to happen away from the house. So we clear it out. We call in protections at night, you know, higher self, guardian angels, all that stuff. So we have our daily rituals, and then also I struggle because my kids have been attacked, and I don't think it's because of me, but because of who they are. So one thing I just have to keep in mind, I always want to blame myself for everything that happens to them, but whenever I look into it, I realize they have their own soul contract, and they've designed their own traumas to have in their lives, because that's going to be their greatest teacher in their lives. You know, so my daughter, it kills me, but she has a vaccine injury from when I didn't know, got her vaccinated. And, you know, I do energy work on her, but then I just hit a wall, because her body wants to keep it. It wants, her hands will cramp up like that, and her feet will curl up. But that's just something that her soul has chosen to keep with her. And the same thing with my son. So he also got vaccinated at the same time, and he wound up with high functioning autism.
Okay.
So he's just always going to have that sensitivity. He's just always going to have to struggle with wanting to hit everything, because he feels assaulted constantly.
Yeah.
And I've tried to heal it, but then I hit a block where his energy says no, and it says this is my fragmentation period. The beginning stages of life, that's when you're, you know, this golden ray of light. You come in, you turn into the chakra rainbow, you know, you get fragmented, you take on some traumas. And it's kind of the same idea as when your higher self splits into lower selves, different lives.
Right.
They're in the process of fragmenting right now. So there's just not a lot I can do on them right now.
Right.
So I just respect that. But I did, when I've dealt with some grays recently, when I talked to you about it, I did feel a lot of retaliatory energy from them.
Right.
So I backed off that. I decided I didn't want to put my family at risk for that.
Right. Yeah, it's God, there's so much to learn. It's just, you know, and we don't even know what we don't know yet. So it's like, yeah, I mean that's one thing that's really I've been impressed with some of these things that you've been involved with here recently. Just like new revelatory type discoveries, like that has to do with healing, or like just, you know, what beings are doing and what their intentions are and how they want to integrate and stay hidden. And it's fascinating, you know. It's like there's a whole new world out there that you know, that needs to be shared. You know, we need other people looking at this just besides these small little communities of healers and whatnot, you know. And I'm very impatient. So, you know, but you know, yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I just
there's something you're not saying.
Huh?
There's something you're not saying.
Well, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that things aren't moving along faster because I can see these openings where people could really step in, and that's probably true of myself as well. But you know, I feel kind of maxed out. But you know what? I got one thing I can say is that, you know, this work that I've been doing for a year now, we have volunteers coming to us now, and
yeah,
and they're doing stuff that's really helpful and saving a lot of time. And so I think that's the answer, you know, that's going to alleviate my impatience to a great extent, because you know, it's just more hands doing the work now, more bodies involved, and so a lot more is getting done than just, you know, slogging away by yourself, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Denny, you're so ambiguous sometimes.
How's that?
You're like, I'm having this thought, and people can see it on my face that I'm having this thought. Let me try not to say it. Let me try to say it in a roundabout way. You know, let me hold it, and you'll be like, and sometimes I see you like in interviews, and it looks like you're disagreeing with the person, but you're like, you know, I should just let them think about that on their own. And so you're like, I'm just saying you should check this out, you know, or this or that. So, you know, you hold back a lot, and maybe that's the Pisces in you or something. Don't you have some strong Pisces energy, where like you're just a nice guy? I don't know, maybe you feel like you're a jerk, but I think you're super nice. I think you're wonderful.
Thank you.
So, but anyway, when you get to the point where you go, well, in my opinion, I'm like, I'm listening. See what's really thinking.
Yeah, well,
you know, I've told you before, I think that you're in a position to give your opinion because you've got so much information coming through with all the interviews you're doing and all the research you're doing. You're just positioned really well.
Yeah, and I think there'll be a time for that, you know. But right now, like I said, I'm very impressed about all the things that there's left to learn. So I guess I'm a little reticent about, you know, spouting off my opinions about things, because there's that you know, there's that whole arena of things where we've still got unanswered questions, you know.
Yeah.
And that seem to be very important questions to have answers for, because that will lead us on to the next thing, you know.
Yeah.
And we can do that next thing in an intelligent way, but we can't do that next thing in the intelligent way unless we first get these other questions answered, you know. So that's what I'm impatient for. But you know, a lot of it's progressing, you know, and we're learning these new things that we can use. So I shouldn't be discouraged, you know. But I think part of it's too getting older, you know. I have this window of time, you know, where I can see that a lot needs to get done, you know. And but you know, more than anything, I'm just so happy to be a part of it. You know, I've spent, you know, 60 years of my life not really being part of the solution. You know, and it's been a conscious decision. And so only recently have I switched over to being what I think being part of the solution, and it's a big relief to get to spend part of your life that way, you know.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I can echo the same things you're saying. Like, there's so many things we don't know yet, so it's hard to. Man, that's my conundrum. I'm like, there's so much I don't know yet. I'm hesitant to put out my thoughts because I'm like, there's so much I don't, you know, whenever I'm like, well, here's what I saw in the vaccine thing, you know, and someone else can come along and be like, here's the whole deal.
I love those people. They're everywhere.
You know, and they can just like lay it all out, and they've already done all the work. And I was like, oh, okay, that's what I thought. Good. You know, and I feel like a big part of like why I've been able to be really accurate. And one of my big life lessons has been that to learn that I'm accurate, because I doubt myself so much. You know, I want to trust
that's my impression about
my
you.
Intuition
is being very accurate and not being hesitant to go there to get it.
Oh,
which kind of alleviates my impatience, you know, because being around you, it's okay for me to be impatient because I don't have to be that way very long. You know what anyway, that's been my experience.
But yeah, so that's been one of my big life lessons, to be able to trust my intuition. And like after something happens, like my higher self always goes, see, you were right. You should have stuck with that. You were only wrong when you thought you were wrong. You know, and I'm like, yeah, okay.
That's so weird how that works. You know, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I need to think about that, because it's a great lesson.
It's a great lesson, but it also helps you. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm able to be right, because I always leave space to be wrong. You know, like I go, it's okay. I might be. I think if you block that off and you say, I can never be wrong, then that's going to be relegated to the shadow territory, and it's going to get you. Then you will be wrong. So you always have to just be like, I might be wrong. I'm always open to checks and balances. I'm always open to, you know, when I do readings with clients, I'm always like, I feel like I'm translating from another language. And so I'm going to be checking with you to see if it resonates, because you're the authority over your own story. And if it doesn't resonate, I'm going to go back and check my translation.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So what else? Okay, we're running up on an hour, a little over an hour, so maybe we could talk about anything to close, and then we can always do a follow-up if we have an epiphany and say, oh, we forgot about whatever, you know, we can go back and do another.
Oh, yeah. I've probably left so many loose ends. When I get talking, I always jump around, so I don't know. Like you, I feel grateful to be a part of everything that's happening right now, and you know, I love this group that we met through right. Eric Rains' retreat, the squad one. It's been such a growth opportunity. It's been amazing.
Yeah, and I'm still impressed by the variety of people that were there. That was off the charts cool. I mean, we had people from France and South Africa and the UK. We had little kids there. We had older people.
I came through a hurricane to get there.
Yeah.
To get through Hurricane Harvey. Yeah.
Yeah. And the venue was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And
you know what I've been doing? I've been seeing us in terms of like a heist movie lately, because everybody has these different skills. So I'm like, you know, these people are like the big guns. These people are the negotiators, the smooth talkers, you know, and these people are I feel like I'm like the programmer or the hacker, you know, like I'm not that valuable for the bigger, you know, like I'm not going to be the one gold blasting like Barbara, you know, and like Eric, you know, but like
gold
if
blasting.
You keep me alive and get me into there, I'll reprogram the whole thing, you know, and then get me out. Like someone's got my back.
That's a great analogy. I love that.
People in the group and like trying to chart out what their abilities are and see like how they're a part of our heist team. Because I think, you know, like I said, we're in the sequel now, or maybe I was talking to my husband about this. Part 1 is like we band together and we overcome some amazing odds and we have this wonderful victory. And Part 2 is about handling inner conflict.
Well, you know, that's interesting because, you know, Eric named it Squad 1, which kind of has this military kind of overtones to it.
Yeah.
You know, or a mission overtones or something,
you know?
A
mission. Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense that you would think of it that way.
Yeah, maybe so.
Because that's Eric's name for it. And I was like, I'm curious. Now it makes me curious. Is like what impulsed Eric to actually call it that, and not like, you know, I mean, there's some other names that he could have used, or even no names. You know, this is just the you know, golden frequency workshop or something, you know, or golden frequency retreat. But he came up with this thing, Squad 1. What's that about?
That's always been his intention, you know, to like equip a bunch of people to go out and do combat, basically.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the motivation there was like he was kind of like the pinch point or the log jam in terms of like, you know, I have all these clients. Wouldn't it be cool if other people knew what I know, and then they could help, you know? And that's something I've heard him talk about quite a bit. And And I'm in the same situation with Carl Mollison now too. You know, he's only done one class. The class that he's going to do in February is going to be a second class.
Wow.
And we all can tell, like, the only way that we're going to get out of this unscathed is to have an online class. Because he's absolutely, I don't know, the guy doesn't even sleep, you know. He's in Chicago, and I'm getting emails from him at 9 o'clock. It's midnight there, you know, or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you got to take care of yourself, you know. So anyway, but the fact that people like Eric and Carl and, you know, Barbara and are doing classes is just it's great. It's so good. I mean, it's very much needed, you know, especially in light of some of the things that we've learned recently about, you know, the fact that healers and light workers and whatnot, they are being targeted.
Yeah,
so it's a fact. I mean, from my perspective, it's a fact. You know, maybe I'll be proven wrong at some point, but right now, all the evidence points to that, you know, being a very much of a focal point for, you know, the dark forces or whatever, however you want to say it. You know,
definitely, yeah.
And
so we have to learn how to practice productive dissent in the group. You know, if we disagree, like
and clone ourselves in the human population.
Yeah, but so far it's been amazing. And I was telling you earlier, I just felt like the ugly duckling. You know, when I arrived, I was Emma and I showed up at the retreat, and I was like, "Look, Emma, everybody's just like us. Everybody's just as weird as we are,
all in one room."
Yeah, all in one room.
With the hazy atmosphere outside.
Oh yeah, that was
the fires and everything.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking your day to do this with me. I've been looking forward to this interview, and I hope we can do another one. And I warned you that there's a prayer out there for you to attend the class in February. Yep. So there's many people working behind the scenes to make that happen, and I hope it does happen. But if it doesn't, we'll miss you, and there'll be the online course in March, etc. But more importantly, it's just I'm so happy to have met you and to do this and to have these discussions. It's so helpful for me. I think it's going to be helpful for our viewers. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great chatting with you today, and definitely I look forward to many more conversations with you.
Okay. All right. And thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll be back. Bye-bye.
Bye.